All right, let's go to Mary in Seattle. Mary, what's up? How are we doing?
Hey, that sounds way embarrassing, so hopefully I don't fudge it that much on this.
Listen, it was super embarrassing. And I'm not even a guy that gets embarrassed. And even I was like, yeah, I probably shouldn't have said it like that. I didn't mean to, but it just happened. It is what it is. What are you going to do, right? It just is. So, hey, what's up? How can I help?
Okay, so I love listening to your show. It's been a great way for me to work through some past issues and stuff. But
well, thank you so much.
It's awesome. I love it. You're constantly talking about practicing desire in sexual relationships, and I wanted to know what you mean by that. Like, what does that mean exactly?
Very cool. Okay, so practicing desire, I got the language from Esther Perel, who I think is just an extraordinary relationship expert. She talks about desire is transitioning from this path in relationships that we find ourselves on, which often is shrouded in shoulds and have tos and need tos, versus what do I actually want to do? And so what happens is you get, like, let's say like me and my wife, we get on a track, which is I need to go do this thing. I have to do this thing. I need to, I have to, I should have done this thing. And then suddenly I never ask myself the question, like, what do I actually want here? And so what does that look like in a relationship? So tell me about your relationship. And do you want to practice desire? Is that the root of this question?
Yeah, I feel like, so my husband and I have been married 15 years. And I would say I don't think we're like in the worst spot ever sexually, but we have been at different times in our marriage.
Sure.
Right now, I feel like we're doing okay. But when I hear you talk about like having just this awesome sex life, I feel like that's what I want. I don't know how to get there. Okay. I feel like we're kind of mediocre. Like, we're not struggling, but we're not like awesome. Like, I want to lean more toward like, hey, this is a serious strength in our marriage where we're just like totally madly in love. I mean, we love each other and I think we have a great relationship in general, but just wanting to develop that more to where it's like a stronger part of our relationship.
I love that. Thank you for walking me through that. So would you be a guinea pig for me on the show?
Sure. I guess that's why I called, right?
Okay. So you painted a couple of pictures here, and these often get mushed together. And so I want to make sure that they're all separate pictures. You said you want to you've got your sex life is fine, your marriage is fine. It's good. Things are good. But you have this dream of it being wheels off, right? And then you also mushed into there, I want to be madly in love. And other expectations on top of that. And so I want to parse out madly in love, which is a Hollywood thing, with a good marriage and a really killer sex life. And there's seasons where I'm madly in love, but man, I'm so exhausted and tired. I'm in a crazy work season, or we've got young kids, or fill in the blank. And so we're madly in love, and madly in love looks like I got to help wash the bottles out, and I'm helping with the sheets. And the last thing we're just wiping poop off ourselves at night when we go to bed from our kids, not from us, hopefully. And we're going to bed, and like madly in love looks like we're doing what we can to survive. And then other seasons, madly in love looks like wheels are off, and like, man, we are clicking on all sexual cylinders, right? So paint me a picture, not an overly graphic one, like I painted before the show started. Paint me a picture of what would it look like? Give me a day.
Of like the dream or what?
What's your dream?
I think for me, like a lot of times I get into the rut of like coulds and shoulds. And so for me, it would just be like this easy, like, yes, I totally want you to put the moves on me. I'm loving this, instead of like, please just let me go to sleep. Like, I'm just tired. Today was a day. So
this is more about your response to him, as opposed to he's not performing well, or he's not the guy you want him to be.
Right.
Okay.
No. I feel like it's probably more me just feeling like, I mean, so we have a bunch of little kids, and there's times where I've felt, I don't feel it as much lately because we've been talking more openly. I mean, we've always talked openly, but I think even more so lately, where I just have felt like, okay, all day long, I have people hanging on my legs and wiping snot on me and begging me for this and that. And at the end of the day, I just don't want to be a need for anyone else.
Yes. Like, you don't want somebody else coming home and hanging all over you. And
like needing me.
Yes.
Like that sounds, I don't know. It's just like, so we go in these cycles where I'm just like, I just don't want to be needed.
Right.
And then where I'm like, no, I love this. Like, and when I can finally wrap my head around mentally, like, actually, I do want this. I really enjoy when we are sexually intimate. Like,
yes.
I actually really enjoy it. But getting to that mental state of like, okay, yeah, I'm happy with this. There's been a lot of times where I've just felt like I am so tired. Why do I not get to be in control, in charge of when I get to go to sleep? Or like, it's been kind of, I don't know. That's been like years ago when we had, like when I was pregnant and had little tiny babies, it was just like, please leave me alone. And now I feel like we're kind of coming off of having little babies and finding ourselves in like the same holding pattern just because it's been what it's been for most of our marriage.
Right.
And I want to figure out how to flip that to where I'm not just like, oh, please don't need me. I want to enjoy that more.
Yes. Okay. So I hear this a lot especially from women, and I don't want to overgender it, but I hear it a lot from women. I'm not super into it until we start getting into it. And then I remember, I really like this. Or I heard it said once, I don't think about sex a lot, but when it starts, I really like it. And the more I have it, the more I think about it. And the more I think about it, the more I want to have it. And it's a self-fulfilling prophecy on one side, and then it rolls off the other side. But I want to push on something you just said. I cannot imagine. Like my daughter plays this game called the sticker game where she grabs your leg and you have to just walk around the house and she's attached to your leg. And it's hilarious for like 8 seconds. And then it's super not funny at all. And she won't stop. I can't imagine having little kids all over me all day long just because they have to eat and be carried. I can't imagine that. And then, can I tell you this? One of my favorite things in the world. Just totally rat on your husband here. I work with big tough guys, big fancy CEOs, people who make a jillion bucks. Like they think they're gangsters, and they are. But one of my favorite questions to ask them is, how do you initiate sex at your house? You come home, you've been initiating like boardroom stuff. Here's how we're going to do this on my company. We're going to do this, and you sell that, and you're fired and all that. Then they get home, and they look at their wives, and they're so insecure, and they say things like, so maybe sexy time tonight? Right? They don't have like a thing. Like there's no way, like, how does your husband initiate sex?
So,
or does he give you like that look, and you're like, ugh, gross, stop. Like, how does he get into it?
No, recently we've been trying to schedule it, which I think has actually been good for me. Like, I was really resistant to that idea for a long time, and finally I was like, all right, we'll try it. And I think it's been good for me to like kind of alleviate some of the pressure that I would be like, oh, is he wanting to be intimate, or can we just go to bed? And like, am I going to feel guilty and all that? So that's been like really great.
And you think about it all day. Don't lose that.
Yeah, it's true.
When it's like, we're doing this tonight, you can kind of like, we're doing this tonight. But then you think about it, and then you kind of go, what's that going to be like? And then what kind of sex are we going to have? And then what is right? So you start going down that path anyway, which is kind of awesome. But go ahead.
Yeah, so I think that's been really good. But other times, if we're just like cuddling in bed, he'll just put his hands, like moving his hands on my body. Mm-hmm. Or I think we had some times where it was like, I felt like the only time we would ever be physically intimate at all was like if we were going to have sex. And that was a few years ago. I was like, I think we need to just hug more and hold hands more and just kiss just to kiss. And that's been really good too. But sometimes I feel like, oh, is this loaded? And it like scares me, which sounds dumb. I'm not afraid of my husband, but like,
it doesn't. So here's what's so important.
It's hard to get into it.
No, here's what's so important. So you said it so beautifully, and I'm going to flip it around you, and I want you to flip it around on you, and I want you to take this with you. You said, I just don't want to be needed anymore at the end of a day. So get that. The question I want you to start asking yourself is, what do you need? And how do you need it? And what would you actually want? Because you spend all day responding to other people, to your kids. I don't know if you work, but to work stuff. And then you feel like you're playing defense against your husband. Like, what are we doing? Do I have time? I'm tired, but can I fit this in? And all at the bottom of all that, it's being sacrificed is, what does Mary want? What does desire look like for Mary? What would it look like for Mary to say, hey, tonight is a hug night. I need lots of hugs. Tonight is a sex night, but it starts at 8 a.m. I need some help in the kitchen. So here's what I want you to have in your head. Number one, can sex become, and this is where the practice comes in, can sex become a place that you escape to, not escape from? And so at the end of an exhausting day, at the end of a hard work week, can it be a place where all of the expectations roll off, all of what you just laid out so perfectly, I don't know, is it going to be this? I just want to hold hands. Can we just kiss and just go to bed? And if I kiss him, then it's going to turn into this. And then, now I'm doing it. I don't want to. I'm tired. Can you get rid of all that stuff and start being super clear with one another? Can you say...
So is that like at the beginning of the date? Like when would you, like how would you actually put that into practice? Like I feel like we've been trying to get more clear when we decided, okay, let's start scheduling this so that it is more clear. And that has been super helpful. But at the same time, my husband's like, well, that's lame if it's like the only time we can ever be intimate is if we schedule it. Like, can we never be spontaneous? And I'm like, I don't know if I'm there yet. I'm trying. And I want to be there. Like, I want to be like, oh, sure, it wasn't on the schedule, but you know what? I actually desire you too. And so
like, you're beating yourself up.
Get there?
You're beating yourself up because we're not in a movie. And I want you to free yourself from that. The simple solution to that, the question you just asked me, is you go ahead and put an extra one or an extra 2 on your calendar for the week. And you surprise him. And that way you both win. It's on your calendar. You know it's coming. You can plan for it all day. And he doesn't know it's coming. And you can say, what would it look like for me to totally get after him? And then you start to feel, what would that power feel like? What about him meeting my needs for once? What does that look like? And I'm going to wear what I want to wear and do this how I want to do this, where I want to do this. And I'm going to stick the kids in front of a stupid TV screen because I don't even care. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It's about you moving to offense. And so that thing you just said is simply about, I'm not at a place where I just think about it at 4 o'clock in the afternoon when he walks in the door, but I'm going to already have it on my calendar. Or I'm going to text him and I'm going to have him meet me in the garage. I don't know, whatever works for you guys, man, right? I want you to focus on not what is, but what could be. And you begin to practice, how do I get myself there? And it may be that you've got 2, let's say y'all put 2 on the calendar each week. 2 days, we're going to sleep together 2 days this week. And you go ahead and put 2 other ones just for you. You don't tell them about them. And one's in the morning and one's like on the afternoon sometime or in the evening, whenever. One is, hey, I'm in the middle of cooking dinner. Can you come help me in the bedroom real quick? And then all of a sudden he's like, what is happening? And it's game on. My hunch is you thinking about that, planning that, will get the train going down the track for you. And if it doesn't, he doesn't know. So you haven't let him down. It's one of your special stars, if that makes sense.
Right.
The second thing I want y'all to do is I want you to get Emily Nagoski's book, Come As You Are. I'll link to it in the show notes. It's the single best book on sex I've ever read in my life. It's written for women about their bodies, and they were just left out of the conversation. Most women were. It's a phenomenal book, but it's also really important for men to read too. And it talks this whole idea about a sex drive is nonsense. It's a series of brakes and gas pedals. And hear me say this, it's about How do I turn more of the ons on and more of the offs off? And those things happen 24 hours a day, 365. They're not about the 45 minutes we've put on our calendar for having sex or for not having sex. It's about how do I create a world that my wife feels free and has space to let her mind go bananas with me at the end of that fantasy. How do I create a world where my husband feels connected and safe and loved here at home, or whatever words he needs, to where he is ready to party when the time comes? And so it's about creating an entire new ecosystem around a married couple, especially folks who've been married for a while. And here's the last thing I want to pass along to you. You guys are going to reinvent things now. And so what we often try to do, and you may have heard me say this, we often try to drag our past. Remember we were dating and it just was like this? And then it's like, remember we were just newlyweds and we had no kids. We were having sex at 4 p.m. on a Wednesday on the kitchen table. Like, where are those days? And what I'll tell you is we take those days and we compare them to what we have now and we say, oh, we're lacking something. We used to have passion and now we're just old and boring. Or we used to be reckless and rambunctious and now, blah, I've got to pay the light bill and let's just watch The Office and go to sleep. And so what I want to tell you is you can't compare your now to then. Different worlds, different people, different experiences. You got kids everywhere. You got expectations. You all look different. Everything's different. And you get to create what next looks like. And for some people, after year 15, that's when they're like, hey, we're going to start doing dress up week, or we're going to start, what's your craziest fantasies? Here's a fun one. Here's an envelope system. It's called the John Delony erotic envelope system. It's not for sale. It's for free. Get 10 envelopes out of like a drawer you have at your house. You take 5 and he takes 5. You each write down one crazy thing you want to try, or it may be boring. I want boring married person sex, or I just want a French kiss for 45 minutes. And that's it. Hands behind your back, sucker. Or maybe it's fill in the blank, whatever it is. And once a month, once a week, you commit to we're going to draw a random envelope. And no matter what, we're doing what's in that envelope. Or I may not fully understand what you're asking here or how this is even physically possible, but I will give it the best shot, like whatever it is. And it adds some mystery. All day, you're like, I wonder what's in that stupid envelope. And he's going to be like, oh, I hope she picks this one envelope. And you're going to be like, oh, gosh, I hope he just picks this envelope. And you're going to get there, and you're both going to be into it, and it's going to be awkward, and you're going to be laughing, and it's going to be weird. And you know what you're going to feel like? Newlyweds again. You're going to feel like you're dating again. It's going to feel weird and a little bit, what are you doing? And that's going to be how you reclaim and practice intimacy. And you may not even be able to get through them. It may be a disaster. And you'll laugh and just go back to boring old person married sex, right? But little things like that you get to recreate what this thing looks like. And so what I want you to hear me say is the trapped feeling you have is 1,000% valid and real. And it's 1,000% in your head. And it's 1,000% something you can correct for. And let me leave you with this last thing. I said I only had one more thing. I got one more thing. Commit to each other to being curious, not judgmental. Be curious. When you find one of that random Tuesday at 2 in the afternoon and you think, if my husband was here, I would rip every shred of clothing he has off his body in the yard. I don't even care. Be curious about that moment. What about that moment, that day? What about him? What about you? What is going on that might be something you can build into your life? On days he comes home and he's like, hey, is it time for sexy time? And you're like, how about I stab you in the face with like a fork I'm holding in my hand? Take inventory of that. Don't judge yourself. Don't beat yourself up. Don't beat him up. Ask yourself, be curious. Why do I feel like I want to stab this guy that I love in the eyeball? And I like sleeping with him. It's not normal. Why do I feel like that? Be curious about it. And then you can begin to reverse engineer the world that you actually want versus the one that you're experiencing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, I think that sounds great. I feel like just listening to you and giving me hope that like, hey, we can do better. We can get past the fact that we've had all these babies and like been tired for a lot of years, and it's like, we can do something different, and I want to, so I'm glad for your advice. Thank you.
Yes. So get that book. We'll link to it in the show notes. Read it together, and there's going to be parts where you're like, whoa, and there's going to be other parts where you're like, I don't really get that. Read it together. Don't agree with all of it. That's great, but it's going to give you all something to work towards. And then go with the John Delony Erotic Envelope System. It's free, and it's amazing, and it will change everything. Mary, man, you make me happy for mankind and womankind. You're awesome.